Welcome to the Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Conscious Investors, welcome back. Welcome back to one of the best episodes that's going to be recorded on podcast recording day, because I am joined by one of my favorite friends, Anthony Vicino. And you've heard Anthony before on the Conscious Investor or Ask Me How I Know podcast, or both. And I've joined Anthony over on his podcast. We've done so much pod swapping, and then we've even swapped with our friend Monica. Like basically, Anthony is fantastic, and we're going to have a really fun conversation. And this conversation is probably going to bounce around a little more than you like, but here's what I know. I know, because I'm going to go to a lot of different places here.
True. It's true.
But we get into mindset, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, like, I have no doubt that you're going to walk away with your mind being blown while you're laughing, because that's how we roll. And seriously, had one of the best conversations with Anthony and Monica Fawn, who you know, she's been on the podcast, and my podcast producer, Natalie Erickson, when we were all in person at the Best Ever Conference in February. So anyhow, I just want to invite you to enjoy this conversation, and then make sure you go back, leave a review, and let us know what you gained from this conversation, because again, I'm just letting you know, I know how these conversations go, and I know you're going to get like some huge gem from it. So Anthony, here we go. Welcome back to—
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome back to the Conscious Investor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Real quickly for the listeners.
There's no real quick. There's no real quick. That's not how we roll.
No, I mean, quickly, we're going to spend a lot of time here, but no, what I do want to say is that like that part about going and leaving a review and leaving comments about like what you learned and what you took away, I think is super important, because if you're like me, you consume a lot of content, you listen to a lot of podcasts, read books, you're always trying to like explore and learn and grow. But if you don't find a way to solidify that learning, like it's just in and out. It's in one ear, out the other ear. And it's not going to be something that you can apply on a daily basis. It might come back in like 6 months, be like, oh, I remember that one thing that one time, but that's not super helpful. So like writing it down, leaving a comment, engaging in conversation with somebody, like going to your, like a loved one or a friend or a family, or like the Chick-fil-A person behind the counter and saying, hey, I listened to this podcast, just learned this thing. I wanted to tell you about it. Like, have a conversation about it. Like, that's how it will stick.
Okay. And that actually is like a huge part of learning modalities, right? Yep. Is that you have to do something with whatever it is that you are engaging with. So I always think, and there's some movie, I want to say Willy Wonka. It wasn't Willy Wonka, but there is some kids movie that has that concept where things are just floating off into outer space. And like, that's what's going to happen if you don't anchor down the ideas that you are gaining. So not just for this podcast, and not just when you go and listen to Anthony and Austin's podcast, Brain Dump, because you should need to, and you should be feasting on that. But whatever it is that you're consuming, like, just take that 2 seconds and leave that review. And it's really, hey, you could just think it's more for me, not like me, the host, but more for yourself in like anchoring down that thought. Love it.
Yep. So it's like it's that paradigm of learn, teach, do, right? So first we're learning, we're acquiring the information here. And then when you go back and leave a review or a comment or share it with somebody else, like that's you teaching, like that's you like regurgitating what you learned and like struggling through it. And then the last part is then doing, like learn, teach, do. Actually, it's learn, do, teach. Anyways, learn, teach, do. We'll go with that one. And then you finally go and do the thing. So this applies for investing too, because I see this all the time with people who just consume, but they're never quite ready to invest. Like there comes a point when you've learned as much as you can learn about riding a bicycle from a book. At some point, you just got to go get on the bicycle, right? Yeah. And at some point, you're going to have to get into the investing game. You can make it small, like dive in, put a little pinky toe in there, make sure that's not going to like ruin your life and you're going to lose sleep over it. But once you start doing a thing, you start learning it so much deeper. So
Oh my
That's my
gosh,
rant.
so much deeper. That do part is day and night. That's why a lot of times, so that's really interesting. And don't worry, I'm coming back to Chick-fil-A. I'm on it. Okay.
Yes. We're not just going to let that one slide.
I'm not going to let the Chick-fil-A slide, and conscious investors, you're going to catch that in a minute. But you know what? That is what a lot of people do, is like they don't take that action. So there are two people. They're the people that sit on the sidelines and they never get on the field and play. And then there are the people that, and I fall into this category, it's like, I don't want to be on the sidelines, but I don't know how the game's played. I don't really care. I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to learn as I'm playing. So there's a balance between the two that you have to find on the paradigm.
Especially when it comes to things that have the potential for like catastrophic ruin, right? Like you can do pretty much anything in life as long as you avoid things that are going to land you in jail, get you killed, or like break your body so horribly that you can't come back from it, right? Like as long as you avoid catastrophic ruin, like generally speaking in the modern era, there's not too many like lethal things that we have to, like too many existential threats. Like there's no tigers in the bush. If we wander off into the forest, like we're probably not going to die of exposure, even if we try, like they're going to find us. And so all that's to say is like when it comes to investing or whatever you're trying to do, if you want to like branch off and start your own business, like just make sure that you're not just like throwing all caution to the wind and saying, I'm going gung ho, like, because
I'm quitting my W-2 job. I'm quitting everything.
Going full time. Yeah. Don't do that. Like, unless
throwing down and going full time, baby.
Yeah. If the worst case scenario is that like it's going to end in catastrophic ruin, don't do it. You're not ready. And that's okay. We can build out like the process and the plan to get you ready so that you can do it confidently. But just avoid things that can end catastrophically and ruin you. So don't jump into the game if the game is like people running around with swords.
It's rugby.
Like stabbing each other. Like, don't do it.
Just don't. You know, that's really interesting though, considering your past, professional rock climbing and things like that. I mean, having my own rock climbing experiences. I mean, they're actually, you're not just jumping into when you climb at that level. We're not just jumping into things. But it's interesting. Okay, on that note, and I'm sorry, I have to just do something for people watching on YouTube right now. And if you're on the podcast, you need to make sure you go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, because it's fun, and make sure you hit like all the whatever bells and whistles there are. I don't really know what they are, but just hit it so that you get the announcements. But if you're watching on YouTube right now, you see that Anthony and I, we're vibing because we are both wearing black V-necks.
It's always about the V-neck.
And we did not even plan that. It's just that we're both that cool and in sync. So YouTubers, you get to see that firsthand. Podcasters, make sure you head over to YouTube to check it out. It's fun.
Steve Jobs was all about the turtleneck. I'm about the V-neck. I'm going to make that cool.
I think you've already done it. I mean,
you're rocking it better. Yours is long sleeve, is it?
It is long sleeve.
Nice.
It's a rainy day today here in North Idaho. Yeah.
Nice and cozy.
Okay, so I'm going to get us back on track here. And there are like 3 conversations that we need to have. Hopefully we have time for them before I pick kids up from school. So we've got like 4 hours. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, perfect.
Totally.
They can wait.
Totally kidding.
Children are resilient. That's our lesson.
7 miles away. They can walk. Not in the rain. So what you're saying is really lends into what we're talking about off air. And that is the Guppy Club. And I'm obsessed with the Guppy Club that you've created, but it is really designed for those people that they're on the sidelines, they're not ready to get on the field, they're not quite there yet, but they want to be there. And so you've created the little like nurturing fishbowl, and I love it. Tell us about it.
So the Guppy Club is like, think about Shark Tank, but less scary. The problem with like,
what is not scary about, I mean, like, I can't imagine Shark Tank not scary. Can we go? Wait, let's go to the aquarium real fast.
Yeah.
And okay, there's the shark swimming around, and you're walking through one of those tubes where you can like have the sharks like around you. Okay, but there are some other friendly things in there. Some other schools of fish.
There's some guppies. Yeah. So the whole idea of the Guppy Club is to learn how to invest in a sea of sharks together. Like. So a lot of people, what I find is they'll read the books, they'll listen to the podcast, and they'll have like the technical theory of what they're looking for in a deal and like how to vet it. But when it comes to actually applying that knowledge in the moment, when you have a deal deck in front of you and you have a couple hours or a couple days to make a decision about, am I going to invest in this deal? Suddenly there's a lot of analysis paralysis and like second guessing and saying like, is this a good deal? Am I about to make a really bad decision? Specifically, especially when you're new, like it's really hard the first couple of times. And so a lot of people were coming to us and saying, hey, can I show you this deal and get your thoughts on it? And I love doing that stuff. I love looking through deals and looking to see like what other people are doing out there and just giving our insights as operators. And like, this is when they say this thing, this is what they really mean, or this is how they hide this information. When they say this thing, but they don't say that thing, that's a red flag. Like, because a lot of times it's not about what you know, it's what you don't know that you don't know. Like it's yes. That type of stuff. And so we're like, well, let's create a community, a guppy club of people to come together. You bring your deals that you're looking at, and we will, as a group, look at them and say like, hey, what stands out to us? It's not investment advice. It's not us sitting here and saying you should do this deal or not doing, and we're not pitching our own deals. It's just, let's look at deals so that you can learn how like experienced investors actually look at a deal deck so that you can feel confident going and taking action. So the Guppy Club is like, have you ever seen like that? My mind, when I first thought about the Shark Tank, but like less scary, was that that mindset poster where there's a fish, little goldfish, and he's wearing a shark fin, and it says like mindset. And it's mindset's everything. And I was like, yeah, that's what we are. We're guppies. We're fish with little shark fins on our back. Like that's who we are. We're like just getting into the waters, and we're going to do it in a school. So it's like a safe environment. But that's the Guppy Club. Some people think it's a dorky name, but I think it's a cool name.
Okay. I don't even understand how when I saw the post on LinkedIn earlier this week or late last week, whenever it was within the last week, right? When I saw the post, I was like, mind blown, genius. And if people just picked up on all the subconscious things and you just spell them out right there, it's like, oh, it's not just one fish, it's a school of fish. You're together, have camaraderie. And okay, wait, I'm this little tiny guppy fish, but I have this cute little shark fin because I can do tough things. It's like, there's so much more beneath the surface.
100%. And like, at the end of the day, a lot of people don't necessarily want to be sharks, but they do want to invest, but they don't want to be eaten. Like,
I'll tell you what, I think I do want to be a shark in the sense of whatever I invest in, I want to be the shark. But
I want it to do well. I want to know that I'm doing well. Like, but I think it's funny. When I first brought this idea to my team, I was so excited at the team meeting. I was like, guys, you're never going to believe what I have for us. The Guppy Club. And it just fell on deaf ears. They were like, how about the Puppy Club? And then like it spiraled into all these other
puppies.
Well, what I was like, if we call it the Puppy Club, people are going to expect there to be puppies there. Like, and I was like, that's not a bad idea. Like if we had like a live local meetup where it's like, hey, join the Puppy Club where we bring puppies and talk about investing, I would probably go to that. But
truth be told.
Yeah, like not terrible idea.
Yeah, that's interesting though. That's interesting. So how did you win your team over? I didn't.
They
you just did it?
I think they still think it's silly, but here's the thing. Here's the takeaway, the lesson is that sometimes like the thing, if you believe in a thing, like it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what the people who criticize it or they don't see your vision. That's okay. That is okay. Like if you believe in it and you want to do the thing, even if people are telling you, even if like your team, the people closest to your loved ones are like, that's stupid. Because here's the thing, the people who are most likely to hold you back in this life are the ones that are closest to you, and they can get you in that bear hug of love. They do it because they don't want you to get hurt. They don't want you to look stupid or like to put yourself out there and outgrow the person that they know you to be, because then they're afraid that you will leave them. Right. And this is all I'm getting very existential. I'm sure my team is not thinking these things.
No, your team's
but
not.
We can extrapolate it out because these are identity things that we all have to struggle with. And the reason a lot of times we don't do that thing that we think would be really cool is because we're afraid of what the people closest to us will think. They'll be like, no, that's stupid. Isn't it? Like one of the worst feelings is when you tell somebody something, like a loved one, something that you're really excited about, and they just kind of go, yeah, that's cool. You're like, kind of, it can kind of gut you, right? I think if you want to really outgrow that feeling, you got to just go and do the thing and be like, I don't care if anybody else finds this cool. I'm doing it because I find it cool. And you'll find your nerds. You'll find your weirdos out there. You'll find the people who it resonates with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taken me a while, but I found my weirdos and my nerds. But thanks, Anthony. High fives to you. No.
Wait, did you just call me a weirdo?
I don't know. Did you want to go weirdo or nerd? I mean, it's kind of up to you.
I'm a weirdo and a nerd. I'm a geek. I'm all the above.
It's yeah, whatever you want to call it. Like anybody who's thinking independently and not just trying to fit the box and stay in the bear hug, or let the crabs who's crawling out of the bin so the crabs aren't pulling them back. Yeah, those are my people. But it takes so much. So what did it take for you to get to that point?
I think it's easy in certain areas and harder in others. And I would be lying if I said that like I don't still really glom on and care about what other people think about me in certain areas of my life. Mm-hmm. When it comes to business, when it comes to investing, when it comes to product design or marketing, like those are areas that I feel so confident in these days because I have such a long track record of success that I'm just like, I don't care. I'm going to do this thing because I know I can, because I have this long track record. But there's other areas of life where I'm like far, far more insecure. That if somebody was to say that's stupid, or I spend a lot of time worrying, like, are they going to think this is stupid, to the point where I might not even bring it to them. I might not even put it out there. So it's not
Would you do it? Hold on. I got to interrupt you. Would you do it anyway, though? Would you basically like not say it, but then do it just to see? Or
so here's an example. Here's a simple example. We were talking about like clothing earlier, and like dressing up for certain conferences or events, and like showing up. And it's about like showing up as the best version of you given the scenario that you're in. And like, are you showing up appropriately? And a lot of the types of events that we go to, or the types of people that we associate with, like they have a certain expectation of what like somebody who owns and operates $45 million of real estate is going to look like. If I'm going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in you, I expect you to look this way, right? We can kind of envision what you probably think that person should look like. Now, my default setting is what you see me wearing right now: a black V-neck and some jeans and some sneakers, right? And so I really wrestle with, going to events and dressing nicely, but then on the other side, going to those same events, but just dressing how I normally dress. So it's like this damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And I would be lying if I said I don't struggle with it literally before every event that I go to, where I literally, to this day, where I still go through the mental gymnastics of like, which one should I show up as? And it's really interesting, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to show up as that person who dresses up and looks that part. But then it feels so foreign to me that like I'm sitting there and I'm like, this doesn't feel authentic. And now I'm struggling with a different thing, right? So it's like, it goes ever deeper.
Okay, so by the way, you totally rock the sport coat, with jeans and cool shoes and everything like that.
Thank you.
I mean, like you totally look polished and great, but you don't look. You look like you could operate, 10 kabillion jillion dollars.
10
whatever kabillion. Well, I'm just thinking like, I don't know, dollars, like whatever monetary amount it will be in the future. It's like, you look like you could do that. But how did you make that decision then to put on the sport coat and things like that? Like what is it that final call? You're in your hotel room, you've got your black t-shirt on, you've got your sea salt hair, and and you're like, okay, sport coat, no sport coat, like final call before you walk out of the room. What made you decide?
It's the idea that, okay, so you always hear about the comfort zone, and like to grow, you have to step outside your comfort zone. But first, I want to battle the concept of the comfort zone to begin with. Mm-hmm. I do not believe the comfort zone is comfortable. I think it's complacent. I think it's known. It's the familiar zone. But often, if we just live our entire life within that comfort zone, we realize like there's greatness inside of us and that we want to be pursuing that, but we're scared. And so we stay in the comfort zone, but that's not comfortable. It's just not so uncomfortable that I'm willing to go and leave it. So it's the familiar zone. It's the devil that I know is better than the devil I don't, right? And so it's not comfortable, it's familiar. Now, if I want to grow, if I want to be like challenged and become a person who can do increasingly hard things and carry an increasingly heavy load through life, then I have to step outside of what's familiar and go pursue the things that are hard and scary and foreign. And for me, when I'm sitting there in the hotel room and I'm like, do I wear my black t-shirt or do I wear this? I go, I can be both of these people. Which one is going to cause me to grow more right now? And it's usually better to choose whichever one scares you more, because whichever one scares you more is going to push you further outside the familiar zone.
Wow. So countering that for a moment, then what about that concept of what if it takes you too far beyond your comfort zone?
It goes back to the beginning. You can do anything in life as long as you avoid catastrophic ruin. Don't do anything that's going to kill you, land you in jail, or break your body or send you to zero. Such you like avoid catastrophic ruin. Everything else is fair game. If I dress up and I go into the event, am I going to die? No. Am I going to get thrown in prison? Probably not. Depends on what I'm wearing. In this case, probably not. Is it going to cause me to lose all my money and be absolutely bankrupt? No. Is it going to cause me to lose any of my loved ones? No. What's holding me back?
Done. I have a similar checklist, which is really interesting, and I'd be highly interested. So let's write a book together, and we'll explore entrepreneurs and their thinking in a different way than maybe it's been explored, because I wonder if this is a common denominator amongst entrepreneurs. You know, I mean, we already have a higher risk tolerance and everything. I was going to say threshold, but what's interesting to me is like, I have these questions and it goes from like some super hard knocks early in my early 20s. And it was like, I'd lay down in bed and I'd say, am I alive? Yes. Did I have a meal today? Okay. Yes. Does God love me? Yes. Good. Okay. You're good. Go to sleep, girl. You know, but like having this like little checklist, like that actually carried me through. It was like a huge way that I got through this like cataclysmic time. That was honestly probably the best thing that happened to me in early adulthood, because it changed everything. But that little checklist. So I like that. I think that's really fascinating.
There's two things I want to unpack, or I want to share here, because one is I have this checklist, or that I call the rules, or the rules of my day, or the rules of my life, which are just like about 15 different things that throughout the day, if I can do those things, then if I look back on my day, I go, that was a really good day. I lived by my rules. And there's things like, did I journal? Did I meditate? Did I tell somebody I love them? Did I call a friend? Little things that don't take very long. These are not hard rules to live by, but they're the rules that I'm like, if I do these things consistently for the next 60 years, like that's going to be a good life. I'm going to be really psyched on that. But something else you said there, which I think is really worth unpacking here, is that as entrepreneurs, you have to have a certain level of tolerance for risk and optimism. Like you have to believe that what you're doing can work, and you have to be willing to take a certain level of risk. However, when it comes to investing, those characteristics are not necessarily the best ones. Like being really risk averse, or being really risk averse is not helpful in the same way that just going out there and pursuing risk is going to maybe end badly. But you can't just go into your investing saying, I'm okay with all the risk. And you can't just be optimistic. And so the things that can help you succeed as an entrepreneur can really hold you back as an investor, or send you on the wrong path. So it's like you have to find a way to balance those two sides of your personality if you're doing those things.
That is a really good point. Case in point, to prove your point, was my e-commerce store that I had in 2021. It's extremely painful experience. And I've alluded to it. So you can, if you listen to this podcast, if you haven't heard me talk about it, just go back and listen to past podcast episodes, you'll hear about it because I sprinkle it in along the way. But that was exactly it. It has that optimism and that hope, and it's like, because you have to have that in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you would be able to articulate that far better, just about like our primal needs. And I mean, mostly we're driven by fear, but we're also conversely driven by, hey, if I survive, I live to see another day. And so we continue on.
It's interesting because you hear all the time, and I don't know anything about your store, so I want to circle back to that because okay. I'd be curious to hear about it. But you hear all the time how like we are the descendants of pessimistic ancestors, right? Like the pessimistic ones were the ones that assumed there's a tiger when they heard the wind rustling in the bush, and so they ran away like a little scaredy cat. Whereas the ones who were like, it's fine. They were the ones that got eaten. So generally, we've heard it's, from a historical perspective, better to be pessimistic than optimistic. But I don't think that is entirely the right frame. I don't think it's the right perspective, because inherently, I think humans are very optimistic and hopeful. It's what allows us to be human and to plan for the future. It's what allows us to take food and not eat it all, to store some of it, to do favors for somebody with the expectation that they will be alive in the future, or I will be alive in a way that will allow me to collect on that in some meaningful way. And so like, it's what allows us to surpass other animals, is that we can plan for the future and expect to be alive into it, which is an inherently optimistic, like a hopelessly optimistic perspective. So it's like the default state is optimism.
Well, okay, so an easy way to test this immediately is look at children.
Yeah.
You just look at children, and they're generally speaking, unless they have like extenuating circumstances in their family that are very unhealthy, right? Which is not the norm. It's not acceptable, but we won't even go in there. But in general, kids are like so happy. Mm-hmm. And they're curious, and they're exploring, and they're optimistic, and they're just willing to go through that. And I think that kind of just alludes, like kind of solidifies what you're saying, because it's like, well, these kids are totally happy. So then along the way, we're just like formed and shaped by our environment and the people, and conditioned to think a certain way and believe a certain way. Mm-hmm. I have to add on to this, wondering where law of attraction would fit in here. And case in point on that, deer. So I think you can relate to this, right? So I'm driving down mountain roads. There are deer all around. And my husband, anytime we leave for the gym early in the morning, he'll be like, hey, just remember, watch out for the deer. It's kind of like just something that he says. I've come to acceptance, right? Like I used to tell him just like, yeah, I know about the deer. And I tell him deer aren't going to hit me because I know they're there and they're not intended to hit me. So I just drive like a normal person. Mm-hmm. Who gets hit by deer more. My husband's been hit by 2 deer like in the last year. I'm like, you're attracting these deer. Okay. Like, so a few different perspectives, a couple different perspectives there.
So yeah, there's a couple perspectives. One is there's a line from a Rumi poem, which is that which is seeking you. I'm sorry, that which you seek is also seeking you. And it plays into this law of attraction concept where like whatever it is that you're looking for in life, like when students ready, the master appears, and like whatever the thing is that you want will manifest. And this is not a hoo-ha, like the universe is going to put it in front of you because like you sat down on the couch and it was like, I want this. It's right. When you set your target on something and say, that's what I want, you start to change your behaviors and start taking the actions that then lead to a universe in which that thing manifests itself. And that's fundamentally different than just sitting down and hoping it happens. The other part of that then is we can change our reality and like our trajectory in life by doing that towards things that would be good for us, right? But far too often we do it in the reverse, where that which we fear is likely to occur. Like when you spend so much time fearing a thing, you start doing things that make the likelihood of that thing occurring more likely. And it's not like you're never doing it super consciously in a way that you could point to and be like, look, I'm sabotaging myself. I'm afraid of spiders. And yet look at me, I'm going to all these spider locations. Like, it's not that obvious, right? Like, it happens in such a subconscious way. But if your fear is like that the people that around you are going to leave you, then you're going to start acting guarded and afraid and constantly indifferent than how you would normally show up. And they're going to resonate with that because your energy is different. And then on a long enough time frame, you might become a person who they no longer want to be around. And your fear then of, you know, pushing the people away from you and eventually they're all going to leave you. Well, you made that happen, right? So one of the things I talk about all the time with new investors is like, a lot of people, they walk up to people and they're like, hey, do you want to partner on a deal? And I'm like, that's the wrong way to do these things. Like, it's like walking up to a woman in a bar and be like, do you want to get married? It's like,
Right.
that's the wrong way to find a partner. The right way to find a partner, to attract a partner, is to first work on yourself and become a partner worth having. And then you attract that thing. So if you want to attract success, be like doing things in your life that make you worthy of success to find you. If you want to find fear and scary things, then live your life in accordance.
Okay, I love it all. I love it all. I'm gonna literally probably listen to this section again after we're done recording. You know, because there's so much truth to that, and understanding like who you are and who you want to be, but that requires clarity. So like once you find that clarity, then you're able to, like, you have your rules for your day that you're like, this is my path to living a fulfilled life. Like, I'm going to be satisfied if I do this. But you can't even take that step if you don't even evaluate and go through that personal development of, well, what is a successful life? What is success?
Yes.
What is my success barometer? And what would I like to see in my life? So like over on the side over here, I have like the vision board of like all these pictures. Like some of them are funny. It's like I printed them off, like stock photos, whatever. Some of them are family photos. Like, it's just a conglomeration of things. And some of them are achievements, but it's like things I've done to remind myself I can do hard things. But all of it is like, okay, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to build. But it took time to get that clarity and to understand.
This is the whole point of the brain dump that Austin and I do, which is to study the psychology of success. And the first thing that you have to come to understand is that we all define success differently. And most people have not stopped to ever define it for themselves because they don't realize that they get to define it for themselves. It's not what their parents think is successful. You don't have to go be a doctor or a lawyer because your parents think that. It's not what society thinks is successful. You don't have to get married and have that white picket fence and get the golden retriever. It can be whatever you want it to be. And it's so interesting. We're born as these very complicated beings that do not come with any kind of operations manual. And that can be very scary and overwhelming for a lot of people. But for me, what's really cool is to realize that we get to write the operations manual for ourselves, and we get to write the playbook for our life. And that's where the rules of the game come for me. That's like chalking the field and say, this is how I play my game. I tell my partner I love her every day. I call my friends and I do these things. And if I do that, that's what it means to be successful. So I have it like defined, not just in terms of like, if I do this from a macro level, but then day to day, like what does actual like success looks like? And it's crazy that it's always so much smaller than you think it is going to be. Like, success is never like the big crazy wins. Like, I'd be curious on your experience. Like, what's the biggest deal that you've ever closed? Like, do you remember your first deal that you closed?
Yes.
And do you remember, like, you might be different because you're better at like living in the moment and like maybe being like aware. But when you signed the paperwork and you realize like, oh, it's done, was it kind of anticlimactic, or were you like over the moon like for the next 2 weeks?
No, I would say most of the time when I've signed on the dotted line and I've done like come to that closure, it really is anticlimactic. It's like, Oh, because it's the process that matters.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna counter this a little bit and say I don't think that it's not. I agree, it is the little things, but the thing that makes those little things challenging is that they're disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
And most people haven't really grown that discipline muscle within themselves. So, like for me, one of the things I love to do, and as you're talking, this is what came to my mind is like, wow, one of the things that's really important to me is connecting with my kids. And it becomes interesting, I've got a teenager and a tween, and like it's really interesting times. But I know one thing I do nearly every single day is I go up, I wake them up, I scratch their backs, and that's how they get woken up. I tell them I love them, I believe in them, they're awesome, God's got great plans for them. I like just speak good things into their life. And my 13-year-old son does not squirm away from it. So I'm like, that's kind of, I mean, to me, I'm like, that's winning. Like I'm actually able to like just start like, dude, if I could start my day off like with someone scratching my back, that wouldn't be my thing, but like that level of nurturing, right? And so but it's a discipline, and as you were talking, I'm like, wow, that's like one of those drops in the bucket that like I hope that fuels them and pays off for them 20, 30, 50 years from now. Yeah, but it is anticlimactic because it's all about the journey. It's all about the discipline.
Exactly. So like it's all to say is like you can't live your life waiting for these big epic moments. It's just this moment, this instant right now that you're living, like this is it. Like and on the discipline conversation, it's interesting. Earlier this week I made a post, a couple of different posts about the concept of discipline, because it was really important for me. Like when I was young, if the listeners don't know, like I have really bad ADHD, and it was very problematic when I was younger because I had no systems for managing it. And the one thing that was apparent is that I've always rebuked external authority and discipline. It does not work. Like you cannot discipline me. I do not care. I won't respond to it. So you can fire me. I don't care. I'll move on. It doesn't bother me. But it was problematic because I didn't even realize that like I was rebuking my own authority. And Socrates said something, I'm going to read it here, which is that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self-mastery. And what I took from that is that those who cannot govern themselves are condemned to a life governed by others. And for me, I was like, the real turning point when I really started to get a hold of my ADHD was recognizing that freedom equals discipline, and that if I couldn't discipline myself, somebody else was gonna have to. And I didn't want that. That wasn't an option. But I would have to step up and do it. And it's been one of the most freeing concepts once I started to understand that like I need to be my own master and assume all the responsibility that entails.
When you have that, by the way I phrase that to my kids, which Socrates sounds so much better than I do, but I mean, like,
a sharp dude.
Man, can I just go back, back in time? But I tell my kids, particularly my 13-year-old, be boss of yourself or someone else will be boss of you. Like, yeah,
perfect.
It's just how this is going to go down in life. I mean, he's been taught that for so many years now, because it's like he's similar, he does not like outside authority. So it's like, well, you got to. But oh my gosh, to that point, that again, let's go into entrepreneurs, mindset of success. If you guys haven't covered this on Brain Dump, let's record a session on it. It'll be fun.
Let's do it.
But that whole concept of freeing yourself. And so for me, in this small town environment that I live in, sometimes I'll be like, I don't fit in. I'm so different. Like I don't do the status quo, and I buck the system, and I'm doing this thing. I do not fit the norm in the profile. And so it feels like, and it's increasingly more that way. So I kind of feel like, am I just turning into a weirdo? Oh, wait, you are, but that authority, that self-authority, all of this is like very full circle for me, because it's like, what do I want in life? They're not walking in my shoes. And every once in a while, the paradigm will like it'll go way too far one side. And I am like, whoa, let's put this back in check, because I'm not intended to please other people. I'm not intended to live for other people. Intended to live out the contribution that I've been created with. And so the moment that's no longer congruent, and that, like pursuing that deeper contribution that, like we're created and able to give to the world, if I'm not unpacking that, then I'm selling myself short, and I'm doing a disservice to the world.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to, there's another Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, who says that we spend so much time worried about what others think about us and so little time worrying about what we think about us. The only opinion that matters, and we've talked about this, you and I, is like that it's so easy to be our own worst enemy or our worst critic, right? But it's so hard to be our own best cheerleader, to be the one that's like rah-rahing for ourselves. It's this interesting paradigm where it's okay. Society has made it okay for us to be hard on ourselves and to hate on ourselves, but it makes it very difficult to love on ourselves, because a lot of times
you're prideful, you're arrogant.
Exactly. It's ego.
You're an asshole. You're this. I mean, like, just throw in all the other things and they make you sound like you're just some jerky kind of person.
Exactly. So I was thinking about this in the shower the other day, is that one of the things that really bothers me is people not understanding humility and what it really entails. Humility does not mean that I make my light shine any less bright for fear of making you feel inadequate. Humility is recognizing and being honest about how good you are at a thing, but recognizing that it doesn't make you better than anybody else. Like it's such a subtle thing. Like, sure, I might be like, to be honest, like I'm really good at certain things, but that doesn't make me better as a human. And I think once we understand that, like, that's what humility really is understanding at the end of the day, like we're all equal. Like in your view, it would be like all equal under the eyes of God, right? Like we're all children, right? And so I just want people, I want to like buck this narrative of like false humility and like people trying to dampen how awesome that they really are for fear of other people thinking that it's ego, they're arrogant, or like, I don't know. It bothers me because I see it so much, and I especially see it with women, more so than men. Men are a little bit more testosterone driven, so they're a little bit more like more like gorillas pounding on their chest and look at me. Women tend to just like shrink into themselves and like have a really hard time claiming and owning the greatness that they have, because society has told them you can't do that.
This is absolutely powerful. So even yesterday, I was talking with my friend Alex. He was at Best Ever, and that's actually where we met. And anyway, so we were on the phone, and he has this great idea for a podcast. And I mean, like, I love to encourage people. If it's something solid, I'm going to encourage you 1,000,000%. I'm going to like high five you and just like build you up. If it's a good idea, if it's not a good idea, I'm going to be curious. Either way, I'll follow curiosity, but if it's not a good idea, I'll probably ask some more pointed questions that are, like to help me understand. Maybe there's more, or maybe somebody comes to a deeper understanding. But in that conversation, when he left, he's like, we're getting ready to hang up, and he's like, golly, I'm like, you're so hard on yourself. Like, you are the person, you are the voice to speak these words into the world, and to like just speaking on how unique he is. And he's like, man, I'm so hard on myself and I gotta stop. I'm like, yep. Yeah. But unfortunately, the worst thing that happens is that people are so hard on themselves that they're no longer contributing to the world. And that to me is okay. It's like breaks my heart because of so much lost potential in this world, just because, oh, they might not like me, or I might make a mistake and it might not turn out perfect, or those people are going to judge me, all because of these outside people that aren't even there. To Marcus Aurelius's point, it's all in our head, and who cares? It's
I think a lot about legacy as a concept. But it's interesting because I don't believe that beyond like the first week after I die, people are really gonna like think about me or care all that much. And so it's both recognizing like we're mortal, we're gonna die, and like people's memory is far less. They think about us far less than we think they do. But when I think about this life and what I want it to mean, and my days, like on a day-to-day basis, creativity is like my highest value, the act of creation. And the thing that I've increasingly found solace in as like a guiding principle for my life is to try to create something every single day that only I could have created, that only I could have done.
That's a cool
like
challenge.
If I hadn't been here on this planet, then the universe would never have been able to manifest this thing without me. And like when you start to think about like how truly unique and weird you are, and like in your wherever you are in the world, and like you are truly weird and unique, there's only one of you.
Yes.
And like there are things that you can do that nobody else in the entirety of human existence and for the rest of all of eternity will be able to do except for you. And I find that to be such a cool, empowering thought that it's almost like your moral responsibility to then go and create the things that only you could create, because otherwise it's like, what was like, you just wasted this opportunity, like, and nobody else can do it. I just find that to be such a cool concept.
Oh, I am nerding out. I'm like over here taking, like scribbling down notes on this concept. And actually, I've been trying to figure out why I used to post my daily message to myself on LinkedIn and such. And I haven't been doing that, but it was always very satisfying. And I think that is why, because I, like you, I'm a contributor, like a creator and a contributor. And it's like, that was my thumbprint. That was like me showing up for the day. Like nobody else has got, like, it might resonate with other people, but that came from within. That was my soul coming out to the world.
Yeah.
That's
and like
powerful.
When you were sharing your stories about like your kids and waking them up in the morning, it's like, that's something only you could do.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're the only one who can evoke that emotion in them in that moment. Like, and so, and you sharing like your daily reminders and lessons, like those are also things that only you could do. And they seem so small. And that's like the message here, is that like the really truly important things in life do not have to be big and momentous occasions. They're just every single day, these little opportunities for you to show up in a way that nobody else could. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm lame, I don't have anything that really makes me different, I'm whatever, like you have to change that perception and realize that you are just as strange and unique and awesome as Leonardo da Vinci or Steve Jobs. Like we know who they are because they've done things, but they are just as unique as you. Like, because Steve Jobs could not step into your shoes and he could not go and wake your children in the morning and make them feel that emotion. They could not do that. There's things that he could not create that only you could have created.
I love this. Okay. I want to add and maybe expand it a little further to combine the two now of discipline with you-ness, right? And so when we take those show up every single day, Michelangelo is able to create these massive works of art, but he showed up as himself authentically every single day with a paintbrush or a chisel or whatever tool he needed to carry him. Like, okay, this is my contribution for today. I'm showing up. This is me. And then it turns into this beautiful masterpiece. What do you think?
It's interesting that it's so much easier in a lot of ways for artists. Because
we're all artists.
No, I know. I'm gonna bring this full circle, okay. But it's easier for people who have a physical thing or something tangent or tangible that they can point to at the end of what they did, and they can be like, I painted this picture, I made this song, I did this thing. Like in a lot of ways, that's easier than the ephemeral nature of like making my significant other feel loved and cherished and valued, right? Like, yeah, there's not a painting at the end of that. It's not like I showed up, punched a clock, and at the end of it, I was like, well, I have a painting here. It's not a very good painting, but at least I showed up and painted, right? And
Right.
it can be harder to like measure like the impact of that creation with that relationship, but it's just as important. It's just as important. And recognizing that the process of like achieving a masterpiece is only ever done one brushstroke at a time, one nice thing, like one nice word of praise or encouragement, or one back rub at a time. Like that's how an awesome life is built.
This is just gold. This is so gold. I always value our conversations so much.
I do too.
And you know what, amazing conscious investors, I'm like, this is again, going back to what we're talking about. This is not arrogance. Humbly, I say, you're welcome. Like, these type of conversations aren't the conversations that take place all around the globe. And to be able to, I think for me 10 years ago, to be able to hear and kind of eavesdrop in, if you will, on the conversation of like this, on this level, it would have been really actually affirming to me. I'm not the only one that thinks like this. Look, they're talking on this level. Like, they're, wow, okay. I'm weird, but I'm weird like they're weird. It's a good kind of weird.
We had a conversation at Best Ever, you, me, Monica,
Natalie.
Natalie as well.
I thought you were looking for a name.
No, I was thinking about I was going back like visually to where we were.
That was so cool.
Sitting in front of like this big window with there's this slide.
Yeah, it was like a snow, like their own, even though there's no snow.
It was like a tubing park.
Pseudo snow tubing park outside the Gaylord Rockies. Yeah.
Yeah. And the four of us had a conversation that spanned for, I don't know, like 2 hours, maybe. It felt,
that was such a gift.
And it was one of those conversations where during the course of it, like, I bet there are people in the world, like a lot of people, who would have paid very, very good money just to sit down and join the conversation at that moment, because, and I would have been one of them, because the conversation was just so good and deep on so many topics. But the problem is, like, those conversations, they happen between close friends behind closed doors quite often, and then nobody else gets to see them. And so I think maybe a lot of people assume that they don't happen then. But I think the power of like podcasting is that we can bring these cool conversations like between two friends, and like, here's the things that we're wrestling with. I mean, we shared some things today. Like, I shared that I'm afraid to dress up and also afraid to dress down. Like, that's a weird thing, if you know me, to be sharing. So it's like, I think podcasting and like what you're doing here and like sharing these conversations and opening that door for people to come in and participate, even as just a listener for now, I think is so powerful. And now the next step is for those listeners, if you're out there, to join the conversation and recognize that like this has been you eavesdropping, but now we want to hear from you as well. Like, and that's where leaving comments and reviews or reaching out and sharing like what was impactful, what was memorable to you, like, and what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Like, that's where the conversation can now go even deeper.
And so I love this. And this is a great segue as we do wrap up, is like, definitely leave that feedback for everyone else. Share this with people that you think this will help expand their world, because that's super powerful. But if you feel comfortable, like, throw it out on social media and tag us in it and let us know what you're thinking, because that can start a whole different conversation. And I'm obsessed with the power of one person, because I can point to the one person of how I met. And it's actually there's a lineage there, but of how Monica and I met. It's like, well, if I didn't decide to go to that event, if I didn't sign up for that, I wouldn't have met this person. And that's the person that I met Monica from, right? So like, everything that we need in life is seriously 6 degrees of separation. And so when we engage in content, we're empowering that content to go further and to reach other people. So it's like helping a ripple effect that absolutely transcends you.
Yeah, think about the fact that you could be the gateway for somebody else to like completely change their perspective on life, and like and suddenly realize that they do have greatness. They have something to contribute, and they might go on to do something so remarkable and like change the world, or maybe they just change their own life. And like both of those are equally cool. So like
Amazing.
you can be that gatekeeper in a way.
Oh, yeah. So you know what? We're all gatekeepers. I mean, that's really it. That's so cool. I'm going to like tone the conversation down just for like, I got to go goofy for a second and just explain. At the beginning, I mentioned Chick-fil-A.
Oh, you brought it full circle. Nice.
As we're wrapping up, I promised I'd bring it back up and that we'd go full circle. But Chick-fil-A is the closest Chick-fil-A to me is in Kalispell, Montana, which is a solid 2.5 hours away. And Anthony didn't even show me the Chick-fil-A. I didn't even see the logo. I just saw the diameter of the styrofoam lid and the straw, which also has a very specific diameter because they're really thick, like large straws. They're good.
It's a big straw.
They're it's for their milkshakes. It's got to, you know, like they got to manage those milkshakes. But anyway, I called it out. I'm like, you have Chick-fil-A? And he's been just sipping on this, like amazing. Is it the lemonade?
No, this is just water.
Okay.
I always go. I don't drink soda, or I try not to drink any sugary things, and so I always go and I'm like, I'll take a water, and their water is really good because it comes with like the crushed ice, and it's like
the magical
it's really good.
It really is. Forget the pH water. Forget all that smart water. Just go to Chick-fil-A and get their water with their ice cubes.
I don't know what they're doing. It's probably just from the tap. Just my expectations.
Right. Their homemade lemonade is really great. So anyway, that's a reference to Chick-fil-A because Anthony, you have like 2 of them within like a stone's throw of you, and you're rubbing it in.
I'm very fortunate. Very fortunate.
You are. You have an abundance of Chick-fil-A.
I will make sure to eat Chick-fil-A on your behalf as much as possible. And I'll take a picture and send it to you every time now.
Okay, please do. That'd be great. Anthony, I value you as a friend. I value as a great philosopher and thinker, you know, in our contemporary age. Like you do powerful things, and man, dang, it's like house fully stacked, you know. I can't get the analogy out right now. All that to say, powerful investor, powerful. So I just keep being awesome. And let's let everyone know, where do you want them to go to, like, if they want to check out the Guppy Club, because the Guppy Club that we talked about at the beginning, like that was way back at the beginning. It feels like a while ago because we've covered really intense topics. So if you want to, like, people want to reach out for the Guppy Club, Anthony's going to tell you where. If you want to continue this conversation on, you know, your uniqueness and being solid in who you are, and finding that confidence to silence the spectators in your life, like, you know, listen to Brain Dump. I'm just going to point that direction as well. So, all right, I'll be quiet. I'll stop rambling. Go, Anthony, where do they find you?
You know, I always like really value our conversations. So thanks for having me and you know, making space for this. Oh my gosh, this talk, because I don't think that there's enough of these discussions happening out there in the world. But for the Guppy Club, if you guys are interested, the next cohort, depending on when this goes out, will probably be in June. And so you can go join, go to theguppyclub.com, and that'll be all the information that you need there. If you want to connect with, what's that?
We'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Yeah. And if you guys want to connect with me, you can, I'm on all the social medias, Anthony Vicino. You can go to anthonyvicino.com. I put out a lot of content around all of these topics, around entrepreneurship, around investing. One of my goals is to help hyper focused entrepreneurs maximize their return on life. So if any of that resonates with you, and then you should definitely reach out. And if none of that resonates with you, then that's okay. That's okay. So, I'll keep doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know what success is to you. And then, you know, just reach out with him on the social platforms and let him know if he looks the part of, you know, a heavily loaded asset manager based on the profile picture, you know, just for funsies. I'm just saying. And in the show notes, we'll also drop down there a previous episode with Anthony where he was talking about like the first time we ever recorded you, we were talking about ADHD and your childhood and things like that. And it was so helpful to so many people. So we'll drop a link to that as well. All right. Any final words? I don't give many people those final final words.
I ran a note because earlier you said you're fascinated with the power of one. And so I would just encourage people to think about like, what's the power of your one?
Love it. I just feel like we needed a moment of silence right there for that, because it's so
Perfect.
So awesome. Amazing conscious investors. I am so grateful for you. I'm grateful for the time that you take to listen to the podcast, and I am like so confident that these conversations just serve you well and support you. But it's always great to get that kind of feedback, because as much as we are talking about defining success for ourselves, you know what, help fill out those encouragement boards, drop an honest comment or review. Honest, if you don't like it, let me know. It's not going to hurt my feelings. That's really great feedback. All feedback is really good feedback, so we can create content that serves you really well. And final reminder is like, please remember adventure. And I say this, it's becoming a recurring saying and expression on this podcast, is adventure. It belongs on the trail, rock climbing, sailing, like doing fun things in life, not in your investing in the special parts of your life. So please remember, like, make great choices, leave the adventure to where it belongs, and make great choices that won't cost you all of the things that we've talked about in this podcast episode. Until next time, live big and love bigger. Feeling alone, disconnected? Conscious investors often feel alone or disconnected because of their unique perspective and desire to expand their thinking. But the journey of a lifetime isn't meant to be solo or forged by grit alone. Join the Conscious Investor community on Facebook. Link arms, exchange ideas, and expand your thinking on finances, relationship, and community. Join the Conscious Investor group on Facebook today.